Hello there. Welcome to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations. This is your host, Anthony King, and this week I'm going to share some closing thoughts about Season 1 of Willow and a look ahead to what a potential Season 2 could be. Now, before we get started, I'm inviting you to join the conversation with us. We can be found on Twitter and Hive at Force Ghost Pod. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok just by searching Force Ghost Conversations. We look forward to connecting with you on those platforms. Also, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your listening site of choice. Plus, Force Ghost Conversations is now live on Patreon. And if you're a fan of the podcast and would like to consider pledging your support, there will be a link in the episode description for you to check out the various tiers offered. Finally, please be sure to check out our TeePublic store to buy some Force Ghost Conversations merchandise. And without further ado, it's time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost Conversations. Okay, everyone, welcome back to another installment of Force Ghost Conversations. And boy, do we have a lot of news to get into this week. So let's get right into our Cloud City gossip section here. Running down through all of the news in the Star Wars, Lucasfilm, Indiana Jones, Willow, all that gallery that you can possibly think of. Anything that's newsworthy, we're going to report on it here. And first, I just want to say that a litany of new Star Wars action figures were announced this week during the Hasbro Pulse live stream. Now, many of the figures are in celebration of the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi, and the Funko Fair also unveiled new pops in honor of Return of the Jedi's anniversary celebration. But they also announced some Willow Funko Pops inspired by the original movie. And I know my wallet's hurting after looking at all these figures because they look immaculate and awesome. So be sure to place your pre-orders today, as I am sure that these items will be a hot ticket. Next, a second wave of guests were announced for Star Wars Celebration Europe. These include Hayden Christensen, Katie Sackhoff, James Arnold Taylor, Dennis Lawson, and Mads Mikkelsen. If you're heading to the convention, you might want to purchase their autograph or photo packages now so that you don't miss out on the opportunity to meet some of these amazing actors who have provided a lot to Star Wars Galaxy over the last almost 50 years now. Also, season 3 of The Mandalorian is less than 1 month away, and in celebration, Star Wars unveiled a new poster featuring Din Djarin wielding the Darksaber. They also published a series of hype videos to get fans excited for the new season. And I don't know about you, but March 1st cannot come soon enough, if you ask me. More details can be found, of course, on StarWars.com. And in other Mandalorian news, Joseph Shirley has taken the reins as the main composer of the series. He takes over from Ludwig Göransson, who helped to establish the original musical cadence of the show. Now, Shirley also composed most of the music for the Book of Boba Fett alongside Göransson, and he looks to continue establishing the musical world that surrounds our favorite bounty hunter. I personally look forward to seeing what he's got cooking for this new season. Furthermore, we finally got a release date this week for Volume 2 of Star Wars Visions. The amazing series will return on May 4th, featuring 9 new shorts from 9 studios from around the globe. The shorts included in Star Wars Visions Volume 2 were created by the following international animation studios, and I apologize if I mispronounce any of these studios. El Giri from Spain, Cartoon Saloon from Ireland, Punk Robot from Chile, Aardman from United Kingdom, Studio Mir from South Korea, Studio Charquette, La Cachette, there we go, and from France, 88 Pictures from India, Dart Taijo, I believe I got that right, from Japan, and Triggerfish from South Africa. And for more details about the studios and their episodes, be sure to check out StarWars.com. And immediately, I wanted to point out I'm very thrilled that Aardman is a part of this project because I'm a big fan of Wallace and Gromit. I grew up watching those. Uh, Animated the stop motion, the claymation series on IFC, and I also am a big fan of Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were Rabbit movie. It's one of my favorites around the Halloween time. So very thrilled to see what they are able to bring to the Star Wars galaxy, as well as what these other studios. I'm very excited to learn more about them and to see their stories brought to life. Now, finally, for Star Wars news, the highly anticipated Star Wars Jedi Survivors release date has been pushed to April 28th. Now, surely this added time will allow the developers to create the best product for our audiences, and I am confident that the extra wait will be worth it. So be sure to put in your pre orders now so that you get the game as soon as it comes out. And finally, in terms of just news in general, you may have heard in the preamble for the episode, but we have launched a Patreon, folks. We are finally on Patreon, and this is something that I've had in the works for quite some time now to have it up and running and ready for you all. So if you feel obligated or you would like to pledge your support in any way to Force Ghost Conversations, we would be so thrilled if you did. And you can obviously check out our Patreon site for that. A link will be included in the episode description here, so you won't have to search too hard for it. Also, it's available on all of our social media channels at this point. So if you're really looking for it, you'll find it on those places. But also, if you want to go to Patreon, you can just search for Force Ghost Conversations and we'll be there as well. Now, what Patreon is it's a place where basically it's a pay for service kind of thing where I have different membership tiers, and at a certain tier you get access to various types of goodies from Force Ghost Conversations, both listed and unlisted, because I've got some ideas coming down the future for ways to continue growing, expanding upon the various membership tiers that are listed. But for as little as $1 a month, you can get some cool items, technically from Force Ghost Conversations. So I just wanted to go through those membership tiers first to explain it a bit more in detail so that you can decide if you want to pledge your support or not. So we have 4 tiers offered right now, and they range from $1 a month to $10 a month. And each level is named by a different Star Wars creature. So the first level, the $1 a month level, the Wampa level, basically that's a very introductory tier, $1 a month. I will say your name on the podcast, and you'll be forever. We will be forever grateful here at Force Ghost Conversations for your support. That is absolutely true for every level here, but thank you so much at the Wampa level, especially for that. The next level, the Wookiee level, at $3 a month, you will also have your name read on the show, but you also will have the opportunity to submit questions to be answered on the show. So weekly, I will post in the Patreon uh, site for those that are members at the $3 tier or higher. You will have the opportunity to put in questions for the show, and we'll debut those on a new segment whenever those come in. And talk through those questions. And they can range from anything in the Star Wars Lucasfilm galaxy and all that stuff. So that'll be a lot of fun once we finally get some of those up and running. Midway through the tiers, then we have the Lothcat level at $5 a month. And in addition to being able to have access to sending in questions, getting your name read on the show, you will also be you'll have the chance, or at that point you'll have the opportunity, I should say, to listen to exclusive podcast episodes. And what that means is by that you'll get one extra episode of Force Ghost Conversations per month. And this is where I'm really excited to kind of unveil some new content here, test drive some new things, maybe talk about some things that I maybe wouldn't talk about on the main show, or at least have a platform where I can do some of those more deep dive discussions that I would love to do more on this show. So if you're a fan of Force Ghost Conversations, let's say, you may recall a previous episode that we did that was all about the patience of Qui-Gon Jinn. And that's a really great deep dive episode, and I'm really proud of that episode overall. So be sure to go check that out. But that's kind of what I would like to do more so with some of these episodes here on our Patreon site. Of course, there's some things we haven't talked about on in the Star Wars Lucasfilm Indiana Jones galaxy, where I haven't talked about a lot about the main films in its own run. I haven't talked a lot about the various animated TV shows. I haven't talked about Star Wars Visions or the documentaries that have come out since. So this will really be a place for us to have all this other deep dive conversations, discussions, as well as to get wacky, fun. The sky's the limit, frankly, on what we can produce there. So if you're loving Forest Ghost Conversations and you want an extra episode per month, this is the tier for you then. And then finally, at our $10 a month level, the Rancor level, you get all the stuff included before then. So you get your name right on the show. You have the invitation to send in questions. You'll get access to the once a month extra podcast. But you also will have an invitation to share your Star Wars experiences. So once a month, I will allow members at that level to submit anything that they have as an experience in the Star Wars galaxy. So let's say you went to Galaxy's Edge and you want to share about that experience, or you have a fond memory of watching Revenge of the Sith in movie theaters. This is your place to do that, and I will read those aloud on the podcast. And it really helps to kind of grow this community that we have here in Forest Ghost Conversations. And if any of those tiers are inviting or exciting to you, be sure to go check those out. But yeah, that's really the big update that I had for this week. Also, just as a reminder again, we had some new designs on our TeePublic store. So all of our our Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and Willow inspired logos, as well as some other goodies, are now available on our TeePublic site. So if you haven't been on our TeePublic store recently, there's some new stuff to go check out there. And I'm sure you can find something in the Force Ghost Conversations family that you will be so thrilled and excited about. And now's the time to get it if you want to support our Force Ghost Conversations merchandise at Star Wars Celebration coming up in April. So get on that as soon as you can. So with that, folks, that is all I had for the news this week. We'll be back after this very short break with some final thoughts about season 1 of Willow, and also a look ahead at season 2 here. So we'll talk if that has happened. So we'll be right back after this short break. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the main chunk of our Force Ghost Conversations episode, which will really be kind of closing the book, if you will, on Willow, the series, and kind of concluding our conversations for now about this as we look towards potentially what a season 2 could be, and also just looking at this great interview that John Kasdan, the showrunner, one of the writers, one of the main writers, I would say, did with Entertainment Weekly as the season finale premiered. So the story came out in actually a couple weeks ago, January 14th. So, and it's by Maureen Lee Lanker. And there's a lot of great tidbits here about the making of the series overall and what a season 2 really could shape out to be, as well as just getting some final answers to maybe some outstanding questions about the season overall as we look ahead towards what could be and just reflect on all the fun stuff that we got in this first season here. So I hope that you all at home have had a chance to watch Willow by this point. It's a really great show, really great series thus far. I'm very hopeful that we'll be getting a season 2 announcement very soon. I'm hoping at Star Wars Celebration, fingers crossed, that they're probably getting their work in for this already. I know Wales is where they filmed it, just a couple hours train ride away from London. So the hope is that maybe they can get started on film in a while, come over there, pop over, say it's happening, have some of the characters come out. Do really great. And I love the fact that potentially Star Wars Celebration could become something larger than just Star Wars, but more so like a Lucasfilm convention overall. I would love that. I'd love the idea of that overall. And I can only hope. I can only hope. So I just really wanted to talk a little bit about this this article here, and I really want to start here at this question here. About Eric and Alora and Graydon, this kind of love triangle that's going on right here, right now, right? What's up with that? I think that might have been a lingering question that some of us had heading into the end of the season, looking forward to a potential season 2. And the question that was posed to John Caston was, now that Eric has come back to himself, is there any chance that he and Elora would reconnect, or is her heart fully with Graydon at this point? And John responded with, she's not really either with, well, not really with either of them, frankly. And she's intent on taking a little break from dating entirely. And we'll see how she does with that. But Eric seems to not, he's not at all done with her. In fact, she's only more attractive to him now that she's Empress of the world and the most powerful sorcerer ever, and has come into her powerful power so fully. So let's look at that for a second, right? I think that kind of is attuned to Eric in many ways, as a son of Mad Mardigan and Sorsha. It kind of tracks. I don't think that is a surprise to anybody here, but yeah, yeah, it would make sense to me too that Alora would be kind of taking a break from it all. She's got a lot on her plate already, just being Alora Dannon and finding that out a couple of weeks, if not days. I don't know how long the overall season took, but yeah, that would have been a hard pill to swallow overall. And then the fact that your boyfriend at the time, who you were going to get married to, tried to seduce everybody into becoming servants of the worm and enacting a harbinger for great evil to take over mother world. Yeah, that wouldn't have been great. So they have a lot of discussions to talk about here. Also, Graydon is kind of gone. He's kind of off into the worm's realm, and Lord knows what he's dealing with right now too. So a lot of conversations are going to need to take place in order for them to even get back to a romantic setting, I think. Whew, that's a lot. I couldn't imagine having to deal with all that at once. But yeah, that's some great stuff here. So let's get to another conversation about in this article about what a season 2 could potentially be. So we do see, here's the question here. We do see Willow and Allura defeat the Crone, but I take it if you have your druthers that their fight is far from over. John responded with, absolutely. It was always designed to be a 3-act story. There you go. These things have to have a finite end to them, because as a fan of these stories, I don't want to think that creators are just continuing it as long as they can make a buck. It's nice in this day and age where there's an appetite from these streaming services for stories that do continue but aren't endless. This was very much designed and intended to that this would be the first part of the story about Allura coming into her power, and then she would have to contend with darker forces beyond that. Yeah, yeah, agreed. I'm glad that they have an end in sight, right? They're not here just to linger, which is something I think that a lot of shows, and John alludes to this too, unfortunately, is that they kind of overstay their welcome. They don't have a beginning, middle, or an end, or they're just kind of existing just to exist. And that's kind of problematic in my opinion. But Willow, it seems like it's going to be, if all comes out according to plan, a 3-season story arc in addition to the original movie, where this is the first part of that 3-act story. And I think you got to look inspirationally wise at the Star Wars trilogy. That's got to be a very similar inspiration for what they're planning to do here. Rightfully so. It's Lucasfilm. That should be the case. So you got to look at it. What's that second one? It's going to be slower. It's going to push our heroes and characters to the places that they've never been before and put them in situations that they've never been in, and it's probably going to be darker. That season 2 might have a dark ending if you're taking my meaning, right? Look at an Empire Strikes Back. Luke loses a hand. He's told that his father is the greatest villain at the moment in the universe and is great evil that killed Ben Kenobi. That's a lot to deal with. Also, Hans and Carbonite, the rebellion's barely getting its feet back together again. That's crazy. And of course, A New Hope is a singular story in many regards, right? It doesn't necessarily beg a sequel, but you can have a sequel to it, of course. But George didn't know if he was going to get a sequel at the time, so he kind of wrote it as, this is where it ends. Now, I think that Willow season 1 has some tendencies that lead it to have another chapter, but so like, for example, Graydon being lost at the end. That's kind of the biggest one there. And but in many ways, if they never have a season 2, I think the season is really great. What we got, right? It kind of is a condensed story in some regards, where Graydon just is unfortunately left out to hang, and maybe we'll get that story teased and what it could be later on in some other mediums. But if they really didn't want to continue it, then they did their best, I think, in terms of not biting off everything, but also not making it just a one and done. It's a fine line to have, of course. But I'm glad that they have kind of this mindset of where they are going for this all. And of course, the crone is going to be upset. This is going to be the crone strikes back in some regards. The crone isn't going to lose this great evil villainess that they've crafted along the way in the crone, and have this harbinger just waiting for them. They're why would they just stop? Evil doesn't stop. Evil never sleeps. So yeah, it's great to know that they're actually thinking beyond just the first season too, right? They didn't come into this with a, oh, maybe we can go 3 or 4 seasons or something like that, or we we need to go 8 seasons or something like that. They were like, we're getting in, we're going to tell our story, and we're getting out, which I think is refreshing. The pacing of the show really matches that kind of mentality too, where they didn't wait until the last episode to reveal who Elora Danan is, right? A lot of it was finding out who Elora Danan is and her coming into her power, which I thought was really great. And something too here that they bring up is in this article is about the idea that Willow's staff is broken and Elora's wand is broken, Sherlandrea's wand, and that's going to be an obstacle for them, right? I think it's, and then John says here, it was a very intentional decision for Willow to sacrifice the conduit for his power to save Eric, and they wanted him to give up something that was meaningful. And now that for future stories that they want to tell in this universe, it's going to be a lot of new ground for Willow, Warwick Davis's character, to handle, right? That was a lot for him to give that up for this boy that he hardly knew, and he's gonna have to learn how to become a sorcerer in some regards too, in a different way, which maybe we'll see. Maybe this is going to become more of like why this is called Willow at the end of the day, right? I don't know. Just think about that. It's going to be interesting. So of course, here too, John also is very candid about this prophecy, right? So they ask in the question here, early in the show, we see Willow say a prophecy claims Elora Danan has to die. And we saw her make it through this time, but should we still be worried about that? John responded with, absolutely. The crone is the worm's agent. She's this talent agent. She goes out, she makes the deals, she tries to recruit people. She's the producer, but she's not the talent herself. The worm is the thing. And that dark force that presses against the light is still very much out there in the world to be contended with. Yeah, we're not done with this anytime soon. And of course, he confirms that that's Warwick, Willow's nightmares, the nightmare sequences that kept coming up throughout the season, where it was like, oh, Laura has to die. I've seen the final battle and all that stuff, where she kind of takes on this evil persona, being the harbinger. And Graydon's there. That's the same place. So whatever dark timeline that he was thrown into, as a result, or if that's the temptation by the worm or something like that, is very evident that it's the same scene, the same sequence, right? And they filmed it the same way too. He's very clear about that. He's like, we basically just took Warwick out there and threw Tony Revelatory in, and said, continue, start filming. I thought that was really great done, and then the fact that they're teasing out this really dark metal timeline, I really want to see that. I think you should too at home too, because that's going to be really, really awesome. And also, like I surmised in the finale episode about that being a dark timeline, like she is a not a good person. That's an evil Elora Danan there. That is probably Elora Danan taken over by the worm for whatever reason, and is now enacting this great evil on Motherworld. So that's all confirmed by John Kasdan in this. And he's like, that's a clear statement of the intention by the bad guy that Graydon sees Elora in this potential alternate path. Like that's going to be a dark timeline, and golly gee, I want to see how it plays out. Now, here's something fun that is great about this article here is John Kasdan speculates that there's a chance we could see Mad Mardigan in season 2. Val Kilmer could potentially return. Now, he's something that he says he would. There's nothing he'd like more, and the world is unpredictable, and the runway has been laid for him. They'd love it. So let's see what can happen here. I know stranger things have happened, of course, in the world. Um, he's kind of in the first season a little bit here, with some sound technology here, a la what was in the Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett with Luke Skywalker. With that technology now out in the world, this is how we can get new things for actors who may not have been able to before, actors and actresses, to kind of reprise some roles that they weren't able to with other technologies. So this is a very exciting time, and I think Val may be up for it. Who knows? I'm purely speculating here, but I gotta imagine he might want to get in the game somehow after seeing this great season come out and having all the fun. So let's talk about the the ending of this all, right? Let's talk about the events of season 1 at the end and what chance there is for a season 2 here. So obviously, from what we've discerned from this interview, is that John Kasdan is certainly planning for a season 2. They shot as many bullets as they could in season 1 and teased out enough that makes people want a season 2. I certainly do. But what is going to potentially happen next? So he's like, can you tease where you envision it going from here? And John said, the events of the finale have to be dealt with in a meaningful way at the top of wherever the story goes, and the implications of the trauma those events cause to our characters and where it lands each of them. I'd love to get these characters out of that desert, of course, and beyond that, they're all looking at very clear conflicts that were deeply positioned in season 1. Specifically with Jade, the question of her loyalties and where her politics are going to land her is at the forefront in our minds in terms of where that character can go and how she's torn between love and country a little bit. There's no shortage of directions that we'd love to explore, but at its core, it's about this conflict between this otherworldly entity and our heroes, and that's far from over. So the idea of the worm still being the main villain is there, but it's going to be a slower character piece, whatever season 2 looks like. I love the idea of getting them out of the desert because that could be a potential several episodes right there. It may be slow and boring, and I can see the headlines already about how the show is not living up to expectations or hype. But that's really where you get great character moments, and the writing is able to just flourish in those sequences. I would love to have kind of Jade and Kit having these wonderful conversations about their love and what it means, and how I surmise they can be a gap between two worlds here, right? The Nakmar of it all and the Bone Reavers and Tirith Lane. One with wealth and power and one without, really. The slaves, the former slaves of Tirith Lane. This can be a real healing moment, but there's obviously, I think, going to be some growing pains along the way. Being in a hot desert environment that can force people to say things that they don't necessarily mean. And it's going to be a journey just to get back to Tirith Lane. I don't know why I envisioned it being super easy. I mean, they had to jump off of a waterfall cliff at the edge of the world in order to stumble into this immemorial city beyond the edge of their known world. So why would it be as easy to get back into the real world? Like, come on now. So that'd be great. Of course, Willow's got to figure out more about himself. Laura Dannon is like clearly dealing with some lovesick puppies around her, and also has to learn how to be a magic wielder and all that stuff. Like, she's got a lot more room to grow as well. So there's a lot of conflict that is still coming that I think the team needs to work out. Even though they left it at really great spots, they've overcome so much to get here. When it gets slow, when it gets quote unquote boring, when the action isn't necessarily around them, that's where character moments really emerge. And we saw that throughout the course of this first season, but I'd like to see that continued a lot more. So then finally in this interview, is there any news that you could share on a potential season 2? And John said, "Only that I'm sitting in my office and continuing to plan and scheme. It's a strange time in the business. It's a transformative time for Disney, so I couldn't tell you anything that felt certain except that we're continuing to work on this with every intention of doing more." So that's certainly confirmation to me, folks, that they're trying to do a season 2 as much as possible. They're working through the story, they're creating it as much as possible. We just need that green light from Disney. We need Disney Plus to say, "Here you go, do that next season." Frankly, might as well renew them for 2 seasons to continue to complete the story at this point. So let's hope. I gotta hope for that. I mean, I'm very hopeful that Star Wars Celebration is a place where that can come to pass. It'll be kind of my bucket list. I know I'm gonna be watching that live stream, hopeful that we get those major panels where such a thing would come out. But I'm glad that they're all on board for this. Seems like the actors are here for it. It seems like definitely the crew is all behind it. John Kasdan is certainly working every angle that he can in order to get this thing to come off. But we just finally need some execs at top. Kathleen Kennedy, I don't know who else needs. Bob Iger, go all the way to the top and get them to sign pen to paper, officially green lighting a season 2 of this epic fantasy series. And I hope that you all have enjoyed it as much as I have. It's been so fun each and every week, kind of talking through this story, getting involved in a whole new world that really has just been so almost foreign in a way, right? Like, we had the original movie. It was a cult classic from the 80s, and I loved it so much growing up, and even to this day I love it so much. But there really isn't a whole lot of knowledge about the Willow world. So John Kasdan really got a blank canvas, if you will, to make this series and kind of lay the groundwork for what are the rules of Mother World? What are the rules of magic in this world? What are the different species? How do they interact with each other? How do they talk? How do they walk, right? All that needed to be defined. And I hope that all the work that John did in order to put this series together doesn't go for nothing. And I hope that the stories of Willow continue to grow and expand. I hope that it gets an expanded universe similar to what it is in Star Wars and Indiana Jones, with books, tie-in series, comics, who knows, all that stuff. I would love it all, and I hope that Willow gets another renaissance as we move forward in this new grand age where high fantasy is at the forefront of just about everything. Game of Thrones is so popular. Lord of the Rings has always been popular. Tolkien lore and all that stuff is at the forefront of conversations, and people are hungry for various stories of good versus evil, and with good being tested to their limits, overcoming in the end. And it's through friendship, family, found friends, family, all that stuff, and believing in yourself that anybody can do anything. Those are really tenets of what Willow is overall. And it's been fun bringing all this story to all of us each and every week, and I hope to continue with more Willow content in the future. Of course, it's going to be kind of a closing book on that chapter for now, almost putting the book back on the shelf, if you will, as we saw in the end of season 1. And I hope that you enjoyed the ride here. It's been fun in the Force Ghost Conversations realm to talk about something a little different than Star Wars, but very much in the same vein, with similar people interacting and being involved with the series in various ways. But yeah, this is going to kind of be a little bit of a break from the Willow talk for now. I mean, maybe on the Patreon we'll talk a little bit more deep dives, but until we get some more concrete evidence of potential season 2 and whatnot, we're probably going to take a little bit of a break from that, because right around the corner is Mandalorian season 3. Jedi Survivor is going to be coming out. Visions Volume 2. Star Wars Celebration in Europe, in London. And of course, Bad Batch is still very much going on. And that's going to be our next episode on Wednesday, actually on Tuesday, I believe, because that'll be Star Wars Podcast Day, which we are so thrilled to be a part of this year. So Mrs. Forrest Ghost Conversations and I will release our Bad Batch episode, all about the episode Tribe, on Tuesday. And then Bad Batch will become our weekly episode on Sundays. And with that, we will be going back to a weekly format for just a little bit here, because, of course, The Mandalorian Season 3 and Bad Batch will be overlapping. So that's where all of our conversations will be. But for at least for a little bit here, we're going back to a single day a week release schedule. So I hope you've all enjoyed the extra Force Ghost conversations along the way. I know I've had a lot of fun. I'm glad that my schedule has allowed that I've been able to do so without dropping the ball on too many other things in my personal and professional life. So that's all been great, and you've been wonderful audiences along the way. So thank you so much for listening to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations and for listening to our Willow series overall. If you were a fan of all this or you missed an episode, go check out all that. It's in our episodes catalog. You won't regret it. It's been so much fun. I keep saying to have these conversations, and I'm probably gonna go re-listen to a few episodes here and there as I want to be inspired by the magic of Willow in my daily life. So with that, everybody, that is all that I had for this week's episode of Force Ghost Conversations. May the Force be with you, and take care.